Hey everybody, how are you? I am Bill Shander, and we're here for another episode of Stakeholder Whispering Live. And I'm here with my very good, although it's been quite a few years, long lost friend, Tom Daly. Tom and I worked together, I think, about a million years ago,
Million
and
and a half.
approximately, yeah. And we were just reminiscing a little bit before we got on the call here on the line. And I'm not going to even introduce Tom, except to say that I've known him forever. He's a great guy. And I'm going to let Tom, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So, Bill. Hi, everyone. Yeah, happy to be here. And especially, to reconnect with you, Bill. Um, Funny story, right? Uh, it was a company Bill was working at. It was back in the day when you talked about things like multimedia and interactive shop, right? Those were words people actually used. My last year of college at School of Visual Arts, um, I remember coming into the office where Bill and two other guys were working, and I brought a portfolio of drawings and just dumped it on the table. And I didn't know what they were doing, right? And so, it was over my head what they were, this interactive stuff that was going on. And but at the end of this, meeting with Bill and his business partner, they gave me a key and just said, "Yeah, we don't." They weren't sure what to do with me, but they gave me a key and just said, "Come on nights and weekends." And I did, and I remember it wasn't what I went to school for, right? But next thing you know, I'm in school again unofficially, at night and on weekends, reading through like the Adobe After Effects manual, right? All these 3D software, Macromedia director, and how to do all this stuff. And and I learned more in that first year from just being around you and Ed and Roman. Um, and it just sparked this interest in just anything interactive, right? It felt like I suddenly had these new superpowers, and by you guys just doing something which may have been like a sort of off the cuff decision, you actually set me on a life task of a continuous self learning. um, so just wanted to, I don't know if I ever told you that, how much I appreciated that opportunity.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
I love it.
so and that was my first job. Right after that, I was bitten by the bug, and did took a little detour after that and spent a couple of years at MTV, their animation group. And looking back, it was a blip in my whole career story. But my claim to fame there was doing special effects for Celebrity Deathmatch, making arterial blood spurts and camera shakes, and I got to make Matt Damon blow up Keanu Reeves' head, uh,
For
which
those of you who
was
don't know what he's talking about, just Google
oh,
Celebrity Deathmatch MTV.
Celebrity
You'll find the
Deathmatch.
videos.
Right. And I wouldn't have been able to do that stuff without having taught myself and learned from you and the team at Market Vision at that time. I got those skills that I can, go on and do something that I still look back on as one of the most incredible experiences. I got to tell my grandmother, who asked, like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, right now I'm making someone's head explode, literally." Anyway, but yeah, so I ended up making my way from there into product management, right? Since our topic here is stakeholder whispering, like nobody has to whisper to stakeholders as much as a product manager, right? Who's just jammed in the middle of this confluence of interests. You have customers, you have um, sales folks, you have the CEO, you have everybody is a stakeholder, and you're surrounded by them constantly. Um, so yeah, a career as a product manager, working in tech startups. Um, uh, uh, Had two really great and lucky experiences where the products I worked on went on to get acquired by larger companies. So one example was a company called Boxy that was um, this hardware software combination device that was like a media streamer at the time when people were torrenting TV shows and movies. Boxy was one of the best ways to make sense of your content library. It would go and grab metadata that lived throughout the internet and and create this cohesive library, made it feel like a Netflix experience on your stolen content. Um, that was acquired by Samsung, and so I got to go from a really like intense startup mode to being a a lab inside the belly of a global consumer electronics company. So I got to experience corporate culture at large, but also like a multicultural corporate culture. Got to do some really cool things that still live on today inside Samsung Smart TV's interface. Um, yeah, and I worked at different startups like Spacious, which was a sort of, I like to call it like a combination of digital and physical, where we would activate underutilized street level retail space and turn them into like very posh VIP drop-in workspaces. So it would like turn unusable space in a community into this beautiful livable space for people to get out of their apartments and build their brand, build their startup, raise money. Um, yeah. So after many years working in startups, I'm consulting now, working with a wide range of companies, and hopefully transmitting what I've learned in the trenches. Uh, so that's my
That's great.
story.
That's awesome. So I was super excited to talk to you about this topic for a host of reasons. One, just being to catch up. 'Cause it's been a while. But like I knew you as a designer. Like you said, we hired this kid, he could draw beautiful, cool drawings. You turned into a designer, or maybe you already had learned graphic design, I know, at School of Visual Arts, but you're a designer. And designers have the experience of stakeholder whispering all the time because someone says, make the button blue, and you're like, well, why blue? And then you have to find out why
Right.
they want it to be blue, rather than just taking their word for it that it should be blue. So designers live that. But then, yeah, you went on to become a product manager. Boy, like you said, like you're at the belly of the beast there for sure, because
Yep.
you have everyone is your stakeholder, and you're just juggling egos and all the rest of it. And then on top of that, the fact that you're doing that in startups. Startups live in the world of, it's not necessarily stakeholder whispering in that you're not whispering consumers directly per se, although
Yeah.
Steve Blank would say you probably should in a lot of ways. But long story short, it's really like this unknown. We got to come up with this thing that the world doesn't even know they need yet, and therefore push it out and make sure the world understands it. So I knew you would have a lot of perspectives and stories. So what story would you like to share? Where you successfully helped your stakeholders figure out what they actually needed, which maybe didn't match what they had requested, and it was a great success or a horrific failure. Either way is fine, and lessons learned.
Yeah. So many. But I'll start with a success, right? That maybe had internally, maybe it felt like a mini failure, but in the end, it was the best thing for the business. So my time at Spacious, right? Imagine like we're operating in 50 restaurants across two cities, right? And we install Wi-Fi. We have part-time staff stationed at each one of these places, and our software made it such that you can um, quickly fire up the app and find a place to buy a day pass and go and sit and do your work.
And
And
to
I
be clear for
remember,
the audience, so the deal is that these are restaurants that serve dinner, but during the day
right,
they're empty, and so they would
right,
rent, they
thanks
would
for
use that
clarifying.
space for co-working space. Yeah,
Right. So it was a really interesting thing. Like, so from our perspective, like a business internally has just this knowledge that the customer doesn't have. So we knew like we're doing this hack with restaurants and we were operating inside restaurants. Um, and that's how we thought about the world. And I remember one day our CEO asked me, he's like, "Hey, I think we should start selling food," which was a natural next step to add value, right? Ultimately to make our subscription and the service more valuable. And it started with like let's integrate with the POS systems, right? So this is classic, a stakeholder asking for something and something really
yeah.
tangible. And I caught myself starting to go down a rabbit hole and do research on the different POS systems, realizing, wow, this is actually this is like POS systems are like the windows of the restaurant world. They're so
Yeah.
fragmented, and there's like it's like a fool's errand to try to integrate with all of them, right? And across our restaurants, there wasn't a standard, right?
Mm,
Um, which then got me thinking, like, well, what is the underlying need here, right? The underlying need is we want to add more value, right? We want to add more value to our service, right? We have a restaurant. We also want to make it a better deal for our partners, right? So if we can help sell food on a time when they're otherwise during a window of the day when they're otherwise closed, well, that's a win-win, right? We're making something great for customers and great for our supply side partners. It's a no-brainer. Um, but then, it became clear that it was going to be a technical hurdle. Um, and then I started asking, like, well, it is it what people would actually want, right? Just because we're offering these spaces in these Michelin star restaurants, does it actually mean people want to sit there and eat in the restaurant, right? So
mm,
we could just go and build anything, right? Like product teams, we love to build stuff. Like um, I had engineers ready to start doing some like API integration, and they wanted to like just dig in. Um, but decided to take a step back and see like how can we validate this as quickly as possible to make sure that this is actually in fact the thing that's best for the business. And we managed to test this without spending a minute at all on technology. And
mm,
we realized, what do we have in place, right? Um, we already had built an SMS system that enables us to communicate with all people in all of our locations and specific locations. We were paying part-time staff to be there. What if we used humans as an API, right? And test this out and validate the core sort of the hypothesis that was in our CEO's mind when he asked for this feature was that the assumption was people are going to want to pay for lunch and stay and sit for lunch.
mm.
So we spun up a quick pilot test in only one location using our lovely human beings, and they would just text out the menu for the day. And we talked to the one restaurant just to have a prep staff in for that one day. And actually, it was a week pilot test. And we were just absolutely blown away by just the lack of interest amongst the people in the space for eating. So, um, long story short, because I know we don't have a lot of time, what we did in a really cheap way was it was like a yes and scenario. Like, okay, I see this idea, think it's great. I have no idea um, the merit of it, but let's actually try. Let's try something. Let's not go and build something, which is what the initial ask was, but let's validate it. And that's really what anyone wants. Anyone that's a
Yeah.
stakeholder, especially a CEO, you don't want to go and waste your precious resource, which until all these no code AI building tools was your code. Right? Now it's all throwaway.
Yeah.
But at the time, like that's you can commit for weeks to build something that nobody's ever going to want, and that's just a
Yeah.
nightmare looking back as a leader of any kind. Like, wow, I actually I invited us to waste all of our time on a non-essential uh, problem.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so
actually
long
really
story short,
good.
yeah, we proved it out, and then we spoke with people, and we were blown away by how blind we were to, I guess, what should have been obvious. Is like, I want to get away from my desk, and we're like,
Yeah.
whoa, just because just because they're in a restaurant, like in their mind, they think of this as their office. We think of it as
Right.
a restaurant that is acting like an office. It was like, no, I want to go for a walk and I want to get a burger down the street, and it might even be more expensive. So
Yeah.
it was a really good insight and learned, and in a way it was trust building too with my stakeholder at the time as the CEO. It's like, oh, okay, I can ask for things. I'm not always going to get a yes, sir, and it's going to be built, but I might get something even better, which is not doing something that will have wasted my precious investment dollars, right?
Yeah. I love that example too, because the book is really about how to talk to people, how to conduct the conversations to figure out what they need. And in the startup world, yeah, usually it's like let's build an MVP as cheaply and easily as we can and directly test the idea. Because sometimes you may talk to people and they don't know. Like you may have asked these people, "Hey, you're going to be sitting in this Michelin star restaurant. What do you think? What if we gave you lunch?" And they might have said, "Ooh, that sounds like a good idea." Like, yeah, why
Right.
not? And
Sure.
so by testing it and then you ask them afterwards, yeah, you get maybe a more realistic answer. Like, yeah, I didn't order because yeah, I like going and getting a burger. So yeah, the stakeholders, even those
Hmm.
stakeholders don't know what they need or what they want and or need necessarily in reality.
Very, very true. Yeah.
How about a failure? Do you have any good examples of failures where like, boy, if we had only done that, then we would have saved $1 billion or
Yeah. So I have, I guess this is a story. It's you know, one of my early career failures, but it's less about like maybe helping a stakeholder get what they need and more about like this stakeholder management and stakeholder whispering in a way, right? Um,
Mhm.
it's a big project that the request from the CEO was we need to digitize our process, right? With too many people, and for us to scale, we'll need to hire a lot more people, you know, uh, to enable that scale rather than productize what we built. And in order to do that, it's basically we need an admin tool, right, that allows like one person to do the work of 10, right? And it all made sense. And I went down this path of you know probably one of my first real product management roles, and I ended up uh, trying to bite off too much myself, getting to a place where um, I figured out what the need was, but then getting into the details of this, making this thing real, right, and wireframing it. It ballooned and snowballed, and I knew this project was way off the rails, right, and I I didn't share it with anybody. I basically like quietly boiled, at and allowed this to just get worse and worse and worse. And part of there's some lessons in here about you know not having to know all the answers and not having to do everything yourself, right? Most importantly, it's being honest with stakeholders, right? Because you need to build and maintain trust, and trust, it takes a long time to build up, but it's lost immediately.
Yeah.
Like night vision, right? Trust is like night vision. Um, Goes away right away. It's a lot how a lot of sailors end up falling off their boats out in the ocean. Um, um, so yeah, so not yeah, not being clear and saying, "Hey, this is going off the rails." I underestimated the effort involved here. It just allowed it to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get past the point of no return. And I remember having this sort of melting down on a weekly status call and being so discombobulated and overwhelmed. Also, was at a time with a newborn baby at home, which is not lack of sleep, and it's
That's a
just
correlation there, maybe.
yeah, it's like the key is just inclusion, right? Like include your stakeholders as early as possible. Include them in delivering the hard messages, like, hey, this isn't going like I planned. Um, and it's these types of failures are important because one, you can recover from almost anything, and two, they make you just clear about how you need to be in the rest of your life after that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so in another thing is like learning to think like a stakeholder. Like, especially for product managers, there's this mantra like product managers are the mini CEO, and it's not as true as that. It's been proved that it's not that true, but there are pieces of that are important, and I think the lesson in there is um, do your best to understand how the business works, right? What keeps your stakeholders awake at night, and act as if you were a stakeholder, even though you don't make the same money, you don't have the same equity position, right? Like the more you act like a stakeholder yourself, the more trust you'll build. You'll see that, like, your stakeholders see that you're, in a sense, you're a proxy for them making decisions that they might have also made.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I might
No,
be going off the rails a little, so help me.
no. I think it's great. First of all, trust, 100% agree. It takes time to build trust. And the fact is, your stakeholders have to trust you to engage in these conversations with you, to indulge you with all your stupid questions or whatever you're doing with them to try to figure out what they actually need from you. They have to trust you to sit down in the first place. So trust is huge. And yeah, all the sailors falling off the boat. That's a great, visual. And now I'm never going to fit that one. Um, but then, the second part, yeah, empathy. I mean, I have a whole chapter on empathy. You have to develop empathy. You have to understand your stakeholders in order to get in their heads, in order to help them figure out what they need and to engage with them in a helpful way and all the rest of it. So no, not off the rails at all. I think it's
Yeah.
two critical things that are part of this.
So
Um,
yeah, oh, you touch upon something that you reminded me of something as CEO. Like a lot of my roles, I reported into the CEO over the years, and I had this one CEO that we would have these candid chats about like how things are going in the business and how like the dynamics were between other departments. And I remember him saying something like, yeah, so and so is they're like the VP of like business blocking." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Or like it was something else. It was funnier use, like turn of phrase, or like the
yeah,
anti progress or success department. And there's a real risk in that, and it happens a lot in design and in product, which might the two worlds where I have the most experience, where you put your discipline and your craft above the business, right?
yeah,
And it's like, well, this is the way a product does it. It's like, who the F cares about the way product does it? You have to do it in a way, like, you have to show that, yes, it's true that there are processes and frameworks, but those frameworks should never get in the way of, again, empathizing with the stakeholder. They need to grow this thing, or they need to show revenue within such time period, or they're never going to be raised to Series B,
yeah,
right? And if you're out of alignment with that, and you're putting all this like practice and craft process in the way, then you're going to get fired, right? Or
yeah,
you're going to get sidelined, and you'll be told what to do instead of asked how can we achieve this goal. They're just going to be like, this guy doesn't care
right.
about what the goal is, so I need to just get them to build what I need.
You just brought up the other. I was just about to say that, and that's the other key. So I have a chapter on curiosity, and you have to be curious in order to do this well. And part of being curious is you have to care. You have to give a shit. Like if you don't care about your job, about your company, about the market you're in, about everything, if you don't care, then you're not going to actually want to solve problems. You're going to get
Right.
hung up on your process, your world, and that's not how to make success happen. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, and caring, like, okay, not everyone has their dream job, but there's always something super interesting under the
Yeah,
surface. Whether it's how people get their day-to-day job done, like there's like, if you have any kind of like anthropologist bone in your body, anytime people are working together, there's some fascinating thing happening, right? Where that
yeah,
you can learn something and
yeah.
improve something.
I agree. Yeah, there's always something. I love that. Well, Tom, we went way longer than we usually do, and this is a
Ah,
new series, so maybe this is the right time frame. Maybe this needs to be longer because that was a good conversation. Any final words of wisdom? Any other like little nuggets of boy, this if you want to manage your stakeholders well, this is like the one little tidbit. And I'm
ah.
putting you on the spot. I didn't warn you ahead of time. You might have to come up with something,
It's
so it's
fine.
okay.
It's fine. I actually prepare for these sorts of things.
Yeah,
Um, so I've been training karate for a number of years now, and anyone who's heard anything about martial arts, you hear like, oh, it's not about the you versus the opponent. The opponent is actually yourself.
Mm,
So here you are in the world, in your professional world, You're going to be dealing with stakeholders, right? The one consistent thing in all of those relationships is you. And when things go bad, sure, it's easy. You could blame everybody. You can blame, oh, the stakeholder is just unreasonable, their demands, but you're the one that actually reacts to all those demands. So the work you have to do is on yourself, right? That's what I've learned from my martial arts training, and it's actually seeped into my professional life and personal.
I love that. That's great. You prepared well, my friend.
Oh, thanks, Bill. This
All
is this is
right.
great. Let's do this every day.
Excellent. No, I would love to. That would be so much fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom. And people can find you, I assume, here on LinkedIn. And I don't know if you have a personal
Sure.
website you want to share, but go for it.
Yeah, it's tomdaly.me. Really simple.
All
Um,
right. Excellent.
all right.
All
And
right.
yeah, I look
Thank you so
forward
much.
to send me a copy of the book, or you're going to make me
I,
buy one.
I'll find you a copy.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.